before we were in the age of Leo, we were in the age of Virgo, and then Virgo went into Leo. So now for 2,100 years or so, we've been in the age of Pisces. And now we're passing into Aquarius. In fact, we are definitely in the early stages of Aquarius, and there's no turning back at this point. And so right now, at this point, now that we've actually gone into Aquarius, we're having a lot of really fascinating astrological transits related to leaving the age of Pisces and going into the age of Leo. So you and I are having a conversation at a really great time, because this is the real turning point is really 2024 through 2027. And at this point, now that we're into 2025, we are really in it. And where you can really see that is like in political events in the United States. There's just no stopping this. People better just forget about anybody being able to stop anything. They're not going to be able to, because that energy is greater than any human being.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You mentioned that we previously had physical cataclysms, where this one seems to be a lot more emotional. What are some of the hallmarks that you see at the moment of coming to that conclusion?
Yeah. Anytime that we go through emotional growth, we have to go through the journey of the dark and the light. Like if you go through a physical destruction, as we did 12,000 years ago, you're just in the third dimension, which is linear space and time. And then a great big earthquake just lifts you off the top of a mountain or whatever goes on. But this one, because it's emotional and because it involves clearing and understanding the last 12,000 years of human experience. See, that's what's really fascinating. We are being called to integrate the emotional impact of 12,000 years of human experience, which is huge, you know, you know. And that's why my grandfather in Cherokee tradition, the teachings always go from man to woman and then from woman to man. So my grandfather, of course, was a man, and he was, of course, to pass the teaching on to one of his daughters. And he had three daughters. But he knew that his daughters would not be here when it really hit the way it is now. And so that's the reason I became the carrier of this tradition. And it involved a lot of emotional processing. I've done a lot of work on myself, a lot of past life work, a lot of emotional work in order to carry the force of this, because you'll have to admit this is intense.
I'd love to know more about what it means to be a record keeper, because at some point at the moment, we have a very written based society, but I'm sure way back when, in even like your grandfather's time and the people that have handed the wisdom on to him, it was more of an oral, like verbal
Yeah, that
tradition, right?
went on man to woman, woman to man. In our tradition, which is southeastern Cherokee in the United States, it goes back to about 5 to 700 BC. In basically pretty much in Egypt, as a matter of fact, our particular tradition. So there are, of course, many carriers of many traditions who are passing generation by generation. We hear about various teachers. The interesting thing about my grandfather was he insisted that I was to pass those teachings to the public. And a lot of other teachers are too. The Hopi teachers are doing that. And he insisted that my job, it's been quite a lifetime, was to pass those teachings on. And so that's why I do what I do. And so that's why I consider my most important work. I have around 15 books, but I consider my most important work to be Alchemy of Nine Dimensions, because we don't have an awful lot of guidance for how to open the higher dimensions in particular. A lot of people have trouble even imagining what they are. They have trouble detecting them. They have trouble decoding them and receiving the messages. But in fact, according to my work in Alchemy of Nine Dimensions, it's clear that we can do this. Like, for example, the seventh dimension is the dimension of sound, which is coming from the cosmos, which is the same as the music of the spheres, according to the Greeks. And the sound becomes geometry in our world. And so that's an ancient teaching that actually, if you think about it, it's not that hard to understand. Like in the Bible, it says the word of God became the meaning of our world, you know? So one of the things I've done is I've really worked to explain these things in a way that people can understand them. So people my age thought I was crazy. And people 20 years younger than myself or 30 years younger basically thought I was completely stupid or something. But miraculously, at this point, with the 20th anniversary of this teaching coming back, because this is the third edition of this, the younger people understand it. They just they go, "Oh yeah," you know? And then once you are able to stop thinking it's stupid or stop thinking it's a bunch of something stuff that somebody made up, then you can start working with it. And this is fascinating stuff. A lot of your listeners are going to be people who have worked with sound healing and worked with crystal bowls, and a lot of your people are going to be people who love crystals and geometry, and like here's a beautiful icosahedron that I always work with. And when you start working with geometry and working with crystals, your consciousness really accelerates. It just does. And so we're ready now to do this, and it's really the only thing we can do against some of the potentially nefarious aspects of our world. For example, artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence could be a good thing. Any teaching or any technology that comes to us can either be good or bad. It's a matter of choice. So right now, the powers that be who want all the money and all the power, they're holding all of the AI information in the first four dimensions. The first dimension is the central core of the Earth. Second dimension is the space between the center of the Earth and the surface. Third dimension is linear space and time, and here we are. And then the fourth dimension is the realm of dark and light and the archetypal realm, where the yin and the yang, where things struggle for balance. And they're trying to keep all of that information basically in those first four dimensions. And so one of the things that I discovered after writing my own teachings from my grandfather is I discovered there are other people who have figured this out on this planet. And so one of the things I cite in the introduction of alchemy is a lot of information about things that are going on in Romania, in Transylvania, in the Carpathian Mountains, where people are discovering how to access really complex forms of information and consciousness only by means of being in the higher dimensions. There's a really interesting dynamic going on right now where AI is trying to keep it in the first four dimensions, which means we'll be entrapped and we'll become digital robots. Or if we open our consciousness and access all these levels from the higher levels, like sacred sound, geometry, the Pleiadian realm is the realm of unconditional love. If we access things at those levels, no system on this planet can trap us and make us robots.
Thank you for that. You described the first four dimensions. So what's the can we go four all the way up through to nine as well? Can you take the time to explain what each of the dimensions are for us as well there?
Yeah, so let's take our consciousness. Let's go into the center core of the Earth. And when you go into the very center of the planet Earth, you are in a world which is vibrating with all of the planets and stars and elements in the universe. And you have total omniscient knowledge and you know the Akashic records. Then you bring your consciousness through the second dimension, which is an incredible activator because there you are and you have all this amazing knowledge. Like I was given this knowledge as a child, which was wonderful. And so when you go into the second dimension, that's where the elementals and the mineral beings and the earth spirits reside. And they will help you and tell you everything you know in order to be completely healthy and vital while you're alive. Then you move into the third dimension, linear space and time, where you have a life and a family and a job and all these wonderful things that we do. And we all understand the third dimension quite well. The trick is to stay oriented well in the third dimension.
Hey there, Inspired Evolutionary. If you absolutely loved this, well then here's a full conversation with this guest on the Inspired Evolution podcast. Check it out now.